Hello and welcome to SoulSchool. I'm Theolyn Cortens. And this is a webinar presentation that I created for my subscribers. This is being recorded autumn of 2022. And of course, you may not see it until 2023 or beyond. But whenever you do see it, I think that it can be really inspiring for you, because what I'm describing as the golden path is a true way to find your confidence and your courage in the world. And you bring that golden thread of divinity with you, so that even if your path may feel cluttered or covered in mud or detritus, because we all suffer from those ups and downs in life, even so, you can always access that golden thread that can assist you on your route through life and make it satisfying and fulfilling, and a sense of being captain of your fate. So let me share the screen and then I can show you the presentation. So that's my mission in life as at SoulSchool. It's to empower you to become the master of your soul, the captain of your fate. And the insights that I offer are gleaned and collated from my personal experiences, from angelic channeling and many decades studying NDEs and spiritual experience, astrology, tarot, Kabbalah, philosophy, psychology. So all those experiential research, inner research, as well as academic research, provide me with the underpinning for the classes that I offer to people. So welcome on board. And I want to introduce you to this notion that you have this golden path, that you can discover your soul's mission and you can create strategies and timelines so that you fulfill it. Now, the famous English poet, William Wordsworth, described how we come into the world trailing clouds of glory from heaven, which is our home. And he says our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting, and that the soul that rises with us, our life's star, has had elsewhere its setting and comes from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness, he says, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory from God, who is our home. And heaven lies about us in our infancy. And even if you don't like the word God particularly, think of that word that he uses there. Think of it in terms of your own language, whether you want to say the divine source or universal energy, whatever it is, it comes with us because we are participating in it. We are the children of that field of energy. However, Wordsworth does say we don't come in utter forgetfulness. And the Greek philosopher Plato tells us the same kind of idea, that we do come from somewhere else, from a realm which is full of divine love, power, wisdom. But as we come into the world, the Greeks had this idea that we cross a river, and they called it the river of forgetfulness. And this is familiar to us. So many people come to me and say, I can't remember what my divine contract was. I can't remember my mission, my purpose. I can't get a sense of why I'm here. And the Greek idea was that you have to drink from this forgetfulness. In some senses, if you remembered all your previous incarnations, you could really get overwhelmed by the memories. You only need to accumulate in this life sufficient memory to assist you in a sense of meaning for what you're doing now. Plato also says that some people or some beings that are reincarnated, they are aware that they have to be careful how much they drink. And if they are sufficiently conscious in the previous life, when they get to the river, they'll think to themselves, no, I mustn't forget everything. I must just be careful how much I drink. So that's a really interesting notion, that there was a choice at the river of how much to remember. So the Greeks described this as a process of descent, coming down from heaven, passing through the river Lethe, and then we may forget our mission, the promise that we made, the choices that we put together for what I call the divine contract. But the Greeks say, if we watch the heavens and consult with our celestial support team, then we can recall why we're here, and we can feel stronger about sailing our ship of life. And they developed horoscopic astrology. Astrology is much older than the Greeks, but it wasn't until a couple of thousand years ago, or a bit more, that the Greeks began to develop these very precise concepts and skills and practices, techniques, many of which are used by astrologers today when they create your birth chart for you, or your natal chart, or your horoscope. So in the poem, Wordsworth also mentions our life's star. He actually, in that line, says that our soul is our life's star. But we might take a slightly different way of looking at it, especially if we go back to Plato, because the life star for the Greeks was a guiding star, just like a mariner has a star up in the sky, the North Star to follow. Then we have what the Greeks called a daimon, or daemon. It's not to be confused with a demon. And the Christians would have called it a guardian angel. And this is an inner capacity, a sat-nav, if you like, that guides our process through the world. And it's a hidden part of ourselves, it's our hidden angel, if you like. And it reveals its wisdom when we seek it out, when we ask. And we can seek this wisdom through using oracles of various kinds, like tarot cards and so forth. We can look at our birth chart. We can meditate, we can listen to our dreams. All of those areas are what we could call trans-rational. They go beyond ordinary reason. They are symbolic and provide us with an insight into the invisible part of our being, the part of ourself that is discrete from our everyday self, which is dealing with the ordinary stuff like paying the bills. So if you imagine that your daimon, or your guardian angel, is not a separate being that's actually literally hovering around you, but is actually embedded into who you are, and you have to make regular contact with it, just like building a relationship with your partner or your members of your family. You need that regular contact. That's why I say meditate every day, twice a day. And then you build up this relationship, which is with what I would call your beloved angel. Now, this is a map, an old cosmological map, probably medieval, judging by the little chap at the top, little god chap with his blessing hand and his halo. But what we're looking at here is a series of concentric rings that are depicting the different planetary cycles. And these are in the order that the Chaldeans, the very ancient astrologers, spoke of them. So there's Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. And those 7 heavenly bodies were regarded as gods. And they were also regarded as bringing divine wisdom with them, a different quality of divine wisdom for each of the 7. So clearly we now know that there are planets beyond Saturn, but we can still look at the group, including Saturn, as a very powerful council, if you like being in a ministry, different ministries within a cabinet. That's what we would say in England anyway, the cabinet of the gods. That's what the Greeks would have called them, the gods who are running the show. And they obviously felt that they were running the show up there and that they could occasionally get messages from them coming through. But from a modern perspective, we could say that this cabinet of gods is within us and that we can take charge of it. And therefore, we can become master or mistress of our destiny. So that's the Chaldean ladder of gods: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. And I always add the Earth in there because the Moon is in a binary relationship with our Earth. And I very much see them as a couple, and that we need to consider that our earthly life is tied in with a kind of marriage with the Moon. It's a very particular way of looking at it, especially when we come to the Archangels. So those are the planetary glyphs. I don't know whether you know much about astrology already, but I came across this rather delightful series of metal, what are they? Wands, aren't they? Which show you all the glyphs. So, archangels. For every one of those planetary gods, there is an archangel. Now, the archangels are depicted in this fashion, usually by Christian painters, Christians creating icons, sometimes stained windows, stained glass windows. So the pictures that we have of the archangels only go back as far as the Christian era. However, the tradition of the archangels is much older than that. And we don't quite know how old, but they come into Jewish mysticism at least 500 years before Christ. And the stories of these angels and archangels do appear in the Hebrew Bible. That's what the Christians call the Old Testament, but also in various scriptures that are not included in the Hebrew or the Christian versions of the Bible. So some of the stories that we hear about the archangels are what they call extra canonical. Yes, I get my tongue around that. That means to say they are legends or myths, and they haven't been given enough significance or kudos to be included in the usual Bible stories. But there is one archangel for every planetary god. And just to reiterate the ancient connection with the Jewish tradition, this is a menorah, probably familiar to you, a candelabra with 7 places on it for 7 candles. Sometimes there are 7 candles, sometimes there are 7 containers of oil. And a menorah was a major piece of ritual silver or goldware in the Jewish temple in the days when they had a temple, because it was destroyed in 70 CE. So that's just when Christianity begins. The Jewish people lose their temple. But they would previously have always had the menorah in the holy area, not in the Holy of Holies, which was behind the veil, which is where they kept the Ark of the Covenant, but in the larger area, which was called the Holy Place. And they would have had these 7 lights. And that's because they were honoring the 7 planets, and the 7 planets each had an archangel who was a representative of an aspect of God. So unlike the Greek system, where there are lots of gods who do a lot of quarreling with each other, actually, the archangels that we find in the Jewish tradition and later in Christianity, those archangels in a cabinet, you could say, are all very much abiding by the overarching rule of the divine itself. So they are not, they don't have the capacity to squabble amongst each other, because there's an inherent sense of order and pattern that they are coherent with. So the 7 archangels, well, actually there's 8 in this list. So Saturn is Samael, who has quite a tricky reputation in the Jewish mysticism, Samael, but you'll find out more about him if you follow my content. Samael, I just used the word him, but actually I'm more inclined to say her. They don't really have gender, these archangels, but some of them express energies which we might suggest are slightly more masculine or slightly more feminine. And then there's Zadkiel, who's Jupiter. And the Hebrew name for the planet Jupiter is Zadka. It means righteousness of God. And there's Michael. Everybody knows Michael for the sun. And Raphael for Venus. Raphael is the divine healer. Lots of people know Raphael. Mars, I would associate with Haniel. Mercury with Gabriel, because after all, Gabriel is big chief messenger. All archangels and angels are messengers, but Gabriel is creme de la creme. For the moon, Oriel, whose name means light of God. And for the earth, Sandalphon. Again, you can find out a lot more about all the archangels in my other work. So earlier on, I used the word ladder for that list of Chaldean planets. So I now want to introduce you to the idea of Jacob's ladder. This is a painting by William Blake, based on the famous story in the Hebrew Bible where Jacob, who's one of the patriarchs in Judaism, has a dream. And he describes in the dream how he saw a ladder stretching between earth and heaven, and angels ascending and descending. And Jacob goes on to have an experience where he wrestles with an angel, and then he demands a blessing. And the blessing is a new name. So after that, he's known as Israel, which is why we have the 12 tribes of Israel. And the name Israel means he who struggles or wrestles with God. So let's have a look at the idea of the ladder in mysticism, in spiritual journeying, because it's very fundamental to certainly Western esotericism, and it appears in many cultures around the world. The notion that there is a part of us which needs and desires to elevate itself out of the material world and visit a heavenly world, what the Greeks called Elysium. And the dream here is telling us that you can have that experience without leaving your life. So you might say Jacob's ladder dream is like a near-death experience. He has some kind of vision of going up this ladder and coming down, or the angels are coming up and going down. Whether he's doing that with them is not really clear, but that ascent and descent is the motif for the idea of the spiritual ladder. And we find it in mysticism, Jewish and Christian, that we need to make some kind of journey. In Christian mysticism, especially in the mysticism of Saint Teresa of Avila, who was a Roman Catholic nun, but came actually from a Jewish family, so she may have inherited some of these concepts. She describes how her inner journey is like going through a series of rooms, not up and down a ladder, but going inward and discovering different levels or layers of being until she comes to the center. So that's another model of the journey. But whatever image seems to appeal to you, you can say, or I would like to suggest to you, and hope that you would agree, that whatever this is, it's something inner, and therefore it's something within your remit. With you have agency here. You can choose to make these journeys using whichever motif you like. Now, here's another poem from another famous English writer. It's just a few lines from a longer poem called In No Strange Land. And I seem to have lost my show here. Just stay with me a moment and I'll get it back. There we go. Yeah, so the angels keep their ancient places, turn but a stone and start a wing. 'Tis you, your estranged faces that miss the many splendid things. So in this verse, the first verse I've shown you, he's saying that the angels are always here. They've never gone away. And you've only got to turn over a stone or look at a blade of grass and you could see their wings. And the only reason you don't see them is because you've turned your faces in a different direction and you're missing the splendor of the angelic realms. And then he goes on to also use the ladder image. When so sad thou canst not sadder, cry, and upon thy so sore loss shall shine the traffic of Jacob's ladder, pitched betwixt heaven and Charing Cross. Now, this man did have very, very sad times in his life. He became a down and out in London. And I think many, many occasions he was suicidal. But he had this faith and he had these visions. And he believed that wherever you were, even in Charing Cross, which is grubby nowadays and was probably worse in his time, you could still see Jacob's ladder. Wherever you are, you can see the angels ascending and descending. And the land that we're in is not strange. The only strangeness is when we turn our faces away from the divine. Because if we look deeply, intimately, with passion and a commitment to life itself, if we look at every minute of our life and everything that we cross our paths with, whether it's the beauty for me of watching the kites in the sky in Wales, or whether it's going into a train into Charing Cross, where everything is hustle and bustle, if you look deeply, you can still see the angels. And that's what this kind of modern mystical work is all about, is making sure people do not lose sight of that, making sure that we all wake up to the majesty and glory of it. And then all our fears and anxieties start to pale into insignificance. We may still not feel we can find the money for the mortgage when the mortgage rates are going up or the electricity bills are going up. That's not to say those things go away, but you gain a tremendous sense of inner confidence about handling it. Now, in another poem by Francis Thompson, he talks about rattling the gates, the golden gateways to the stars. And that reminded me of this idea of the gates of light that we find in Jewish mysticism. This image, you can see the little man sitting there with his hat on. He's like perhaps a Jewish rabbi, and he is holding one of the very first images in print, this is, of the tree of life, which may be familiar to you. But each one of those little circles on his tree, as it's called, represent a different face of God. And the ancient Jewish mystics regarded those containers of light as gateways to visiting the divine. And they used this model rather like the ladder, so that you start at the bottom, which is called Malchut, the kingdom, and you start working your way up on an inner journey until you reach the crown at the very top. And the crown is again reminiscent of the idea of the opening of the crown chakra. We don't have time in this presentation to go into the similarities that we find in Jewish mysticism with the yogic system, but I can assure you there are many similarities. So let's go back to our angels on the ladder. I included this picture, which is a photograph from Bath Abbey. Bath is for those of you who don't live in England, Bath is a very beautiful city in the west of England. And on the abbey, you see these ladders, and at the bottom of the ladders are ordinary human beings. And as they climb higher and higher, they grow their wings. So here's an angel at the top, and this is like a human person has been transformed into becoming an angel. The way I would think of it is that this is a human being who's kind of in contact with or has realized that he has or she has an angelic self, and that angelic self is not only a guide and a supporter at an invisible level, but also does sometimes display mystical powers and sorts things out in a surprising way. So here's another diagram of the tree of life. And again, I would need a whole presentation to take you through it step by step. But let me just reiterate this concept, and you can perhaps see the words more clearly on this diagram, that we are using the map to make journeys, make inner journeys from our everyday world, the kingdom, and we are elevating our consciousness through different levels. And then we visit those individual sephira, that's the singular of the word, and there are plural sephirot. So each time we meet a new sephira, we treat it like a gate of light, and we ask to meet an archangel who can support our process. And the archangels shown on this version are images from my own angel script deck of cards. Obviously, there are many other images around, and other images may appeal to you, but these are the ones that I present and that I've worked with for many years now. And these archangels are guardians of the gates of light, but they offer you the possibility of a conversation. And in that sense, that's a very useful technique over and above thinking of the archetypes as Greek gods. I always get the impression that the archangels are a route in to a conversation with different expressions of the divine. They are all divinities, but they represent in their own little, each little sephira that they are hovering around has got a different quality to offer you. So Raphael is an obvious one, the capacity for healing and comfort, reconciliation. Those are all divine qualities, and Raphael is the archangel who combines them. So this is a very basic horoscope. I won't tell you who it is. It doesn't matter who it is. It's just a map of a particular moment in time. And it would belong to at least one person, most likely many, many more. So this is like a mandala or a map, which can assist you in describing your soul's mission. And some astrological charts, birth charts, will look a lot more complicated than this one, and you would need an astrologer to help you unravel some of the stories that are embedded in your personal mandala, your personal mission map. But the recipe is there, that's provided to us by those ancient Greeks and then adapted over the centuries up until the modern day, when we tend to look at the maps from a more psychological perspective. But nonetheless, psychological or not, one of the advantages that you have by looking at an astrological map is that you can identify timetables, just as a mariner would look at the tide tables before setting off on his ship. So your birth chart can be very simple. It can just use 7 planets, and the time and place of the birth will tell you which sign of the zodiac is ascending on the horizon. The ancients considered that that ascending sign is the helmsman for your ship of life. So they placed more importance on that sign than they did on the sun sign. So, for example, I'm an Aries sun sign, but I have a Sagittarius sign on the ascendant rising. So for the ancients, Sagittarius is more significant in my life, and I think I would agree with them on that. And then it also identifies what's overhead on the midheaven of the chart, which is also another significant placement and a clue to the quality that you are seeking to express in the world. And once those are identified, the chart gives plenty of information about your soul's path in this lifetime. So it helps describe the golden path. Now, the ancients, when we read them, a lot of those old astrological texts tend to sound as though they totally believed that everything was fated and predetermined and that we have no agency. But even in Elizabethan times, Shakespeare is writing, the fault is not in our stars, but in us, that we are underlings. Now, I think an astrologer, even in that time, would say, well, in order to escape from being an underling, you nonetheless have to recognize what those star patterns are telling you, and then you step into a role of self-determination within that pattern that you've been presented with. So although the heavenly writing tells us what kind of things our mission will be focused on, we are not compelled to follow them through. We will get advantages, if we do, of one kind or another. The advantages don't necessarily have to be financial, or the kind of goal-oriented advantages that a lot of people might think were valuable in this day and age. But there will always be an advantage spiritually and sometimes materially if you follow the golden path. And if you don't, there may be tests. And the tests are not punishments, but they're reminders. They're kind of batting you back on track. Now, I said a lot about the moon earlier, and the moon shows us the phases that we can go through. Again, it's a topic in its own right, but we do have to honor the placement of the moon in our birth chart and recognize what is going on when we are going through different phases in our lives. We look at the phases of the moon, whether there's a new moon when we want to do something, or a full moon. We also look at eclipses and what kind of energy they give us, and the energetic qualities they give us that we can work with. This is all part of mastering the process of living. Very, very, very valuable to all of us to get a sense of the phases of the moon. You know that gardeners are very keen on planting by the moon, and you can also make business decisions by what's going on with the moon. make sure you understand the moon's phases. So for astrological maps for guidance, there's the natal chart, the prenatal lunation charts, the prenatal solar eclipse chart. There was a solar eclipse when you were in the womb. What does that mean for you? What patterns are in it that could be helpful for you to look at? There's something called a draconic chart, which is based on the moon's nodes. Again, that's a topic in its own right. But all these maps record our promises for this incarnation. And then we can develop strategies for a satisfying life journey. And they allow us to map our path, just like a mariner in his ship can use a compass to direct the ship in the best possible way, even when he's aware perhaps that there's clashing rocks on the horizon, or, you know, sea monsters or whatever. Nonetheless, the captain is alert to all these potentials, and he can take advantage of the good possibilities and segue his ship around the challenges. And astrology also gives us these time techniques, various options that we have, from looking at transiting planets as they are in the sky right now, looking at symbolic changes, which are demonstrated by what we call progressions. We can look at the lunation cycles, new moons, full moons, eclipses. We can look at birthday charts every year, solar returns. The Greeks had many more detailed timing techniques called annual perfections and zodiacal releasing and Fedaria. You can check some of those out easily online and find out more about them. Or you can go to an astrologer who specializes in some of those timing techniques. And the archangels will play different roles. So they're supporting this life journey, which is mapped out. And the qualities that you need in order to run a satisfying and fulfilling life will be discipline and structure, courage and confidence, plenty of renewable energy, respite and comfort, healing and abundance, easy communication, including telepathy, and abundant resources. So the archangels give you access to your natural ability to claim those as a birthright, claim all those qualities as a birthright. And you identify your soul's mission, and you observe what the karmic story is, where you've got to in the story at this stage. And then that gives you that sense of being captain of the ship. I say it's as easy as ABCC. Attitude, belief, courage, confidence, commitment. So, in summary, there's a unique mission for you to complete. And once you knew what it was, but now you might feel completely mystified. You are still suffering from drinking from that river. But your Daimon, your guiding angel, will know the way ahead. And if you keep connecting with that part of yourself through your meditations, you will start to really see what this is all about. Sometimes it takes time. It took me a long time. So knowing your natal and your prenatal charts will provide you with this data for a clear life strategy. Every planet has an archangel as a guardian, and specific archangels, depending on your natal chart, there will be specific archangels that will be your supporters naturally. They will be readily there for you. So I now want to present the class that I'm offering in October 2022, which is an 8-week webinar class with questions and answers all about your soul's journey into this world, understanding your timetable, meeting celestial supporters, teaming up with your dream team, realizing how far you've traveled, creating a strategy for 2 to 5 years, creating a personal mission statement, setting your goals, maintaining your focus. And at the same time, you will be learning the Schaefer method. It's included in the Golden Path as an essential supportive meditation program. And that unique meditation system that I offer allows you easy access to the angelic realms, puts you in touch with the gold. That's what I say. And you can check out the Schaefer method, even if you're seeing these slides later, too late to join the class, check out the Schaefer method. And check out Theolyn.com for other classes that I do. Again, if you've missed this particular class because you see this webinar later, then check out Theolyn.com to see what else is on offer, and make sure you subscribe and keep subscribing to the YouTube channel so you see other free content that I put up. If you did enroll in that class, there will be options for personal consultations, either because you've enrolled really quickly, a free one, or certainly a discounted consultation. So that's the Golden Path, 8 weeks, 2-hour webinar classes, all your charts, the Schaefer method program, and those are the prices. Early bird before the 30th of September, if you see this in time, is $375. But if you see it after then, but before the class starts, make sure to contact me if you have a financial issue. I can discuss ways to support you if you really want to join us. Now my screen seems to have jumped back to the beginning, so I'll put that away and regard that as a little bit of a glitch at the end. Sorry about that. But I do hope to meet you, if not for your Golden Path, for some other occasion. You could just book a reading with me, get to know me a bit better, and see whether the courses I offer call to you and could support you on your journey along the golden path of life. Many blessings.